The Sugar Bowl. Number 5, Alabama versus number 9, Kansas State.
It's not even the Sugar Bowl for me anymore. It's the no opt-out bowl. It's like the throwback bowl. Here we go. Alabama and Kansas State. And I love it. I love the fact that all these guys are playing. I love that Bryce Young is playing. Will Anderson. I love it. You know, if you indulge me on a bit of a tangent, one of the reasons why I still love bowl games, and I still think that there is a place for bowl games even outside of an expanded playoff, is really fourfold. But the main one I'm going to talk about here is, like, if you grow up loving football and loving to compete, then play. Then play. Now, I'm not going to begrudge anybody the decision to opt out, in particular if that's going to make your future better. Like, by all means, I'm not suggesting that you're a bad teammate or anything like that. But for the overwhelming majority of people that aren't in that position to make a decision about their future in the NFL, more football is great. Like, sign me up. I'm 40. I'd love to go play one more game. I would probably break in about 2 snaps, but sign me up. You know, there's the development aspect. That's another one. There's the reward aspect. And then there's the experience aspect of bowls. So I love bowls. And I love the fact that Bryce Young and Will Anderson and all these guys from Bama are playing. Now, these two teams could not be more different. Okay. And similarly, although a little bit different than the Orange Bowl, think about, I just want you to kind of wrap your mind around these two schools, these two programs, and what a win might mean, for each of them. Alabama, let's start with them. It's easily safe to say this is the most disappointing season in the Nick Saban era. Now, there have been worse eras. We got the motion lights. Don't worry. We got hotel meeting rooms here, folks. There have been worse seasons, but this is the most disappointing season. Why is that, Joel? Well, you had the incumbent Heisman Trophy winner back. You had the best defender in college football back. They were the biggest favorite preseason for a national title since the Reggie Bush USC teams. So we all thought this was going to be an epic, great year for Alabama, and it fell woefully short of that. They're not even in the playoff. And no win in a bowl game is going to change that. So think about this. They're in New Orleans. Their big guns are playing. And even if they win, it cannot change the fact that this is the most disappointing season in the Nick Saban era for Alabama. And that's not a knock. I'm not trying to knock Alabama. They'll be back. They'll be fine in the future. Look at the way that they've recruited. Last week in the early signing day in transfer portal, they're going to be fine. And I've continued to say that this is not the end of an era. But this season singularly is the most disappointing season in the Saban era based on the expectations coming into the season. And no win in the Sugar Bowl is going to change that. All right. Meanwhile, Kansas State is the exact opposite. They win the Big 12. This is a team that many of us didn't think was going to ever be in that position. They've overachieved. They win the Big 12, epic game against TCU. Now they're sitting there in a win over Alabama with Nick Saban as their head coach, with Bryce Young as a guy that has a Heisman Trophy on his mantle, with Will Anderson, the best defensive player, in America. In the Sugar Bowl, a win in this game makes this one of the 3 best seasons in their school's history. So you see, the totally divergent path that we've got and sentiment that we've got for each of these teams for the Sugar Bowl. And it actually makes it really great. And that's, by the way, why I love the fact that there's no opt-outs, because the fact that there's no opt-outs, I'm not going to have any time. I'm not going to have any mental capacity if Kansas State were to win, I do not want to hear like, well, Alabama didn't have any motivation. Listen, these guys made a big to-do about the fact that they were going to play and they want to play and they want to go finish it out the right way. And I'm not saying Alabama fans, but SEC fans in general, we've seen when Georgia loses to Texas in the Sugar Bowl, or when Alabama lost to Utah in the Sugar Bowl, or when they lost to Trevor Knight's Oklahoma team in the Sugar Bowl. There's always this notion that it's like, well, it didn't mean anything for the SEC and we only play when it means something. Like, I'm not here for that. I think that's a stupid take. And so in this game, like, I don't want to hear it if Kansas State wins, in particular because we've had all of this discussion now about these guys playing. They're taking it serious. I want to see it happen. So what do I think is going to happen in the game? Well, let's talk about these teams and let's talk about this matchup. Do we think that Kansas State can do this, right? Like, are they scrappy enough? Are they good enough on the line of scrimmage? Can Deuce Vaughn get loose? Will Howard? What is it like? Do I think Kansas State can go in there and beat an Alabama team that really played below their standards this year? Well, no, I don't. I'm sorry. Like, I don't. I really love Kansas State, but this Alabama team is a lot better than they are. And as disappointing as the season has been for Alabama, if you pull back and you just look at the other side of the coin, why has it been a disappointment? Well, a lot of close games. They weren't good enough at wide receiver, and they lost a couple that they shouldn't, and they didn't even win their division. Okay? They lost 2 games, and those 2 games happened to be in unreal environments, Tennessee and LSU, and on the last play of the game, Tennessee had to hit a knuckle puck kick in order to beat them, and LSU has to have their outlier game and have a 2-point conversion at the end of the game in order to win. So it's like, Bama's gonna win. I believe that. Like, Kansas State also is weak in the one area that I feel like you cannot struggle against Alabama, and that's in protecting the quarterback. Kansas State's 119th in the country in terms of pressure rate given up. Okay, so with Will Anderson on the field, I'm sorry, like that doesn't compute for me. They also struggle with quarterbacks that can create, right? We've seen that with a guy like Max Duggan. We've seen them struggle with really dynamic running backs when Bijan Robinson got loose and had that great game against them earlier in the year. Jahmyr Gibbs, if he's on the field, those are elements that just clearly favor Alabama. They're the better team. They're favored by 6.5. I'm taking Alabama. I'm giving the 6.5, and I think that the Tide win the Sugar Bowl. It's not going to mean anything to them. It's still going to be a disappointment, but those guys came back, Bryce Young, Will Anderson, or I guess chose to play for a reason. They want to finish it the right way. They want to end on a high note. And I think that they're going to do that. So I'm going to take Alabama. I'm giving the 6.5. Tide win the Sugar Bowl.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.